And we're live again. Good afternoon, good evening, good night. Oh, I keep messing that one up. Welcome to the Mage venue. The web of our life is like a mingled yarn, good and ill together. Our virtues would be proud if our faults with them not, and our crimes would despair if they were not cherished by our virtues. These words are poignant as we fly between scenes. We use the metro rail systems and mobile phones or cell phones to communicate. A meeting is arranged hastily at the noodle shop. Much information has perhaps been found out, and our two minds must now come together to see what wisdom they can. We see Jericho and Nissi arrive. Go ahead.
Okay, Nisi's gonna kind of like wave him hurriedly over to a table and sit down. She's gonna start digging through her backpack and getting her notes out. Among them are several tax forms, and then she's going to put kind of a traditional reporter's notebook down on it, and she's gonna take a pen out too. Okay, so I checked out the cathedral. Well, I checked out a couple of things actually, but I went to the cathedral and I did find the wedding.
It's good news.
It happened 10 years ago.
That's kind of a little bit out of our. I thought we were simply looking for a wedding that happened like a year ago. Isn't like a decade
that's what I
way
thought
outside
originally.
of our search?
But I expanded this. There wasn't any inside the year, and I looked back about a decade. Because I did some other digging as well, and it appears the wedding is important for a couple of reasons, starting with the fact that I know the names of people who got married. One Marcus Lassiter and one Mary Stewart. The wedding skipped past the typical legal counseling sessions that you're supposed to have, just to make sure nobody's doing anything for benefits, things like that. And just cut straight to the wedding. It had everything in there: joy to the world, roses. Sister Alicia was the presiding officiant. Remy was the best man.
Oh, that's the connection.
It actually gets worse. Well, we've been assuming all this time, well, since we first found out that there was a marriage, that this was a woman regretting her husband, her lover, something that happened there. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think it's more of a case of a mother mourning her child. Because these two had a daughter, Chloe Lassiter, who succumbed to cancer about this time last year. She was 9 years old. 9, 10. It's not very old at all, really.
You see Jericho go ahead and scrunch his face up a little bit. He looks to you and he simply says, "Oh, a year ago."
About a year ago.
Do we know how this couple reacted after that?
I believe they took it really, really rough. They bought a bench in memorial of her. That's not... It's a slightly out there gesture, if that means anything, but they didn't use their own personal funds to do it. They used church funds, chantry funds from the Celestial Chorus, which means that in some sense or another, they had a support group. Either that, or they had somebody who was willing to turn a blind eye to the possible misappropriation of funds. She's going to kind of look, and she's going to pull out the tax forms. She's going to go back. The girl's father was the one who signed off on it. Bought a bench in memory of Chloe. And there is one other thing. Do you remember that journal you gave Oliver?
Yes.
It is driving him mad. He has things all over his office, coinciding. In the middle of a huge, crime scene investigation web with all these little threads and pins is a note that says, "Do not trust Chris Serban."
What?
Yeah. Well, if you think about the night he got it and what went down that night, that's not an unreasonable thing to write down. But he didn't know who I was. He actually specifically asked my name when I was there. And Janice, he didn't ask for a last name. But yeah, he is literally going insane. He actually asked me to see if I could find this guy. She takes out a Post-it note with Oliver's number and just the name Chris Serban on it. He's going, like I said, a little insane. Not disheveled, kind of harebrained. For his own, it's not going good for him.
Okay, so Oliver is currently obsessing about what he's written and about that name.
He's obsessing about what he's forgetting, because he's starting to realize, I think, that he is forgetting something. He also wrote a rather odd post-it, "What does the child know?" Which I assume means that he's referring to the boy, but...
The boy that never gleans?
Yeah, it's the only one I can think of, but the phrase "the child," he always refers to him as boy, so I don't know.
Perhaps at one point or another he was witness to some sort of child that acted really strange, and it's like that one memory that's still bunking around in the back of his mind from before he was looped.
I guess. Lisa's gonna kind of shake her head. But the thing is, with the Alpha and Omega case, we're going to need to see to Oliver, because that's not going to end well. So the sooner we can get this done, at least for him, the better. But the thing specifically about the Alpha and Omega case is the fact that she died of cancer. It wasn't a freak accident, means that it was drawn out. Possibly diagnosed when she was very young. But here's another thing I've been thinking about, because we still have that guy on the cross. And I'm not sure if Omega, who is in, she picks up the text files, a celestial chorus chantries files, which I find very interesting for a number of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was working with the church to get money out to some of our more familiar homeless shelters.
Mm-hmm.
But he goes back with them, like this past year. I've got the tax forms for last fiscal year. He's been involved for a while, which actually goes a great way to explaining how these particular people, even though they're of different traditions, met.
Okay, so...
She saw him in a specific venue.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also... She's going to kind of pause and look down. Like I said, cancer is a very lingering, suffering death, like certain levels, of course. I don't know what specific type we had, but
Well,
okay, I don't think there's a delicate way to ask this. But if someone of your order saw someone suffering pointlessly, where it's just going to end in death anyway, over a long period of time, what would a euthanatos do?
euthanize. It's in the name.
I'm wondering if maybe Chloe's father, even though he loved her very much, I'm sure. I'm just trying to... If he saw killing her gently before she had to go through any more suffering as being the right thing to do.
That's a very, very grim theory. I can try
It gets
to
worse.
confirm some details. Oh, it gets worse.
Oh, yeah. Trust me, this isn't particularly pleasant to think about, but that conversation we had about at what point do you realize the person you love is something you cannot handle? I think that was the point. I don't think she realized it immediately, because he stayed around long enough to get that bench. They stayed long enough to grieve, but at some point, I think she found out what he'd done. And trust me, a celestial chorus would not see it as euthanizing. We would see it as murder. To her, and as you said, my family is the thing I would die for. He hurt. It is quite possible, and again, I don't know this, but it's seeming... I think he killed their daughter to spare her from suffering. Mother finds out. Mother loses it. Writes murderer and scorn on his body. Proceeds to lose it. And is now trying to create a world where she can be with her daughter again, possibly be with an idealized version of her husband. Possibly she regrets that. Because if I'm right, and that's what happened, Mary Mary Lassiter, is no longer in anywhere near a sound state of mind. She lost her child, and even though it is devastating and awful, and it may be a type of loss that even somebody who has a faith may have a lot of difficulty getting past, but then she finds out that she didn't lose her child to cancer. She lost her child to mercy killing. So how do you cope with the knowledge that not only did your husband kill your child, but you killed your husband? You don't. You try to make it go away. You try to make it better. You try to go back. Because let me put it this way, that grave had not been visited in months when I went to that grave. It's only been a year. No mother who's lost her child for under a year would let their child's grave get that way unless they were in denial, probably. Like they might just be able to take it. But then you would think that the husband would come out and do something, or another relative would come and do something. No. She does not go to the grave because to her it is fixable. Because a gravestone is final. It's a reminder that death is final. Death is the last thing. She's trying to unfinalize that. And in doing so, she's created a beautiful field of roses, her favorite flower, the flowers from her wedding, where she was so happy, where she married somebody in a very expensive ceremony where there weren't a lot of people. And I can actually figure out why there weren't a lot of people. There weren't a lot of people in the Celestial Chorus chantry, admittedly, and they probably came. But how many people in the Euthanatos chantry would necessarily approve of a Euthanatos marrying a Celestial Chorus? Obviously Master Remy did, or Master Remy was friends enough with this guy to go and put on a brave showing. But not a lot of people attended this. That's what I think happened. And all of the dead, in a way, she might be trying to move past that pain herself. And she might not even see these people who are dying like this as suicides. She might see this as an end to their pain. Like I said, I don't think she's in the right mind.
Erica just goes ahead and looks back across the table, across the documents that's strewn across, far past the steaming bowl, just a few feet away, and simply looks to you and says, "You get it. You're probably the only one that does get it."
What do you mean? Are you agreeing with me? Or?
It's final. It's very, very final. Things are naturally moving towards that gravestone. Everybody is moving towards that gravestone. I've talked to many of my peers who deny it, who think of wild and crazy worlds disappearing, but it all goes back to that gravestone. So, but yes, everything you've said is actually makes quite a lot of sense. Where do we go from here? If she is the cause of all this, how do we rectify it? How do we change it? Do we have to go to her, see if we can't bring some sanity in the situation? Or do we try to disable her? Do we do nothing of the sort?
We need to talk to her. I'm right about that. We shouldn't talk to her into that. We shouldn't talk to her in that realm she's created. We need to talk to her, if we can find her, then we need to talk to her in a setting that is real. That is in this realm, this world. We can't get her outside of that.
It might be a little bit
If we-
difficult to find her.
She's alive, though. At some point, people who are alive need to eat. They need to make a purchase. They need to do something. And is there... But let me put it this way. I do not want to go into that area unless that is the absolute last option. Because if we confront her there, it's just going to help with the unhinging process. That is not... It's not just we're playing on her terms. It's we're playing on a place that is part of this new mindset, this new reality she's creating, where everything is fixable.
Fair it is. Fair it is. We have her name. If you give me only a few days, I can see about finding some medical records of the child that was lost. And hell, even I would want to go ahead and see about that memorial.
Yeah, just like see if the way she died is unnatural, because I might be taking it a step too far with this Marcus.
I could definitely see it. All I have to do is look at the prognosis and the progression of the illness and see if there wasn't any radical acceleration in it. Easy enough.
Okay.
And as far as the gravestone, well, I think that'll be an adventure all in of itself. Where is it? This
St.
bench.
The bench?
Mhm.
I'm just gonna look through the files. Will?
Yep.
The location for the bench?
It's a park that is some miles away from St. Patrick's.
Okay. Nisi's gonna show the transcript to Jericho and kind of point to the address where the bench is.
Alright. Jericho goes ahead and makes his own little notes into a small little notepad. And the hospital that Chloe was treated at, or the hospice, whatever.
I don't have that information, do I, Will?
No.
Well, was it in the funeral account?
It would have a pronounced death signature by a doctor, but it wouldn't have a location. No.
Okay, what's the doctor's name?
Well,
do I know it?
Yeah, it'll be sort of Indian sounding name.
I type it into Google. On my phone.
Okay. It will give you a hospital practice somewhere in the suburbs of New York, a place called Westchester. It's a very, very highbrow, high-end hospital.
Yeah, expensive area. Okay, is it a pediatric? Is it a pediatric area hospital?
It's a wholly private, profit funding hospital, so it looks after all sort of patient care. People that go there basically have a lot of money to burn. It's not usually.
Okay, is it like intensive or is it like a clinic?
Forgive me for not knowing too much about the hospital system over there. It would be.
Would I go there if I needed surgery?
You can go there if you need surgery. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a big hospital. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of show Jericho the address that I got on my phone. Expensive place.
Goes ahead and writes down the address, the location, the doctor. Goes ahead and underlines Westchester. Bill, have I ever been to Westchester before?
Yeah, you've been to Westchester before, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. This sort of makes some sense. This is sort of the neighborhood the MacArthurs used to live in.
I wonder if they knew each other.
They very well could have.
One more thing. Jericho, do you know if has anything happened since they found out your name?
Has anything happened? Well, ever since my contact in the Queen's underworld went ahead and tipped me off that I was a dead man. I could still very well be a dead man, but nobody's been following me, not wraith, spirit, or man.
But I know being careful goes without saying, but I'm wondering, it is possible they know all of our names, and it's not just you. But I've been wondering about the very narrow spectrum of possibilities if it is just you. And one, it might have been just because you were a named rule worker. They just realized you were a mage, and if they'd named any mage, they would have freaked out. Or they could know your name specifically because when we went into the underworld, you did something that none of the rest of us did.
Or Maybe some of the records over at the wheel got leaked. Could be that.
Possibly. Like I'm saying, because that's the only evidence that I could think of we have that you've actually been in the rose field. Because you took the rose and you traded it. You know, you got rid of it, which is good. But suddenly there's one of these roses floating in the marketplace. And if, for whatever reason, Mary is acquiring these spirits and these wraiths around her, one of them sees this floating in the marketplace, traces back to the person who got it. They say they got it from a mage who was in a field of roses.
Oh, yeah, it was very, very literal down there, simply because I like my name known down there. It's a lot easier on business. I should really break that practice.
Well, perhaps, but either way, we need to. We've got a name now. I think we've got who the Alpha and Omega are. And again, it is possible that's not what happened, and they're both working on this together with their daughter. But given some other things, given when things stopped, I'm feeling it might, just the way this is going, might be so much more the first theory. And that she is just taking on this name of the two of them. Again, because she's trying to get to this idealized version before. It sounds like she had a very lovely life. And then, their daughter got a difficult diagnosis, they were dealing with it as best they can, and suddenly horrible things started to happen. This might be
It's your loved ones. It's your loved ones that disappoint you the most. You know what? Just forget I ever. Just forget I said that statement, because no, I'm not going to deal with that right now.
Alright. Nishi's gonna kind of look at him a little oddly. Alright. Okay. The phone's gonna go off. Come on. Work. Sorry, I need to take somebody's late night shift.
Don't worry, just if you could forward me some information so that I can get going on some of these leads, I'd be grateful. Then I can report back to you.
Okay, Nishi's gonna look over her notepad and she's gonna flip through all of the note pages and she's gonna look at them for a few seconds, each one of them, kind of going back right up until she gets to the list of modern weddings that happened this year. She's gonna tear out the list of the weddings that happened this year, put that page in her pocket, and then hand the notebook to Jericho. That's everything I got from
Jericho's guys.
the office.
Thanks. Jericho goes ahead and slides it over to himself, flips through few different pages, and closes it on the table.
Mm-hmm. Alright. Take care of yourself, okay?
No, I always try.
Try harder. Nishi gets up and goes to leaves the shop.
Jericho, do you wish to do anything?
Unfortunately, at the moment, Jericho is going to read through the notes, generally get himself well versed in it, stuff it into his bag, enjoy his meal of noodles. And unfortunately, he is going to take a rest. He is going to retire for this evening.
Then I shall end our scene with an outro. More information has now been found and discussed, and some ideas have been bandied around. A tragic loss, perhaps driven by one side having one set of wishes and the other having others. More to be found later, I think. Thank you very much for watching.